Yeah, it's like, look, it's like the bottom of the ninth inning in the seventh game of the World Series, score tied,
Yeah.
There are two kinds of players. They're the ones who go, this is what I've dreamed about my whole life. I hope I don't fuck it up. And then there's the guys who are like, this is what I dreamed about my whole life, and now I get to live it for real. Who's going to win the game?
Yeah.
Those second guys, right? And so you got to enjoy it when you're in the moment, because you got to remember this is what we've always wanted to do, and we're doing it,
Hey everyone, I'm Luke, and welcome to another episode of Exploring Kodawari. For this episode, we were joined by the fabulous trumpet player and an old mentor of mine, Scott Moore, who's been principal trumpet of the Memphis Symphony Orchestra since 1988. He has performed with the Chicago Symphony, the St. Louis Symphony, the Baltimore Symphony, the National Symphony, and the Toronto Symphony. Basically, he's got a long, impressive bio, and I'll link that in the episode notes for you to check out. And Scott is also on the faculty of the Hot Springs Music Festival in Arkansas, which is where I met him back in 2014. So it was really great to catch up with him and talk about music, trumpet, and life. Just as a warning to our non-musician listeners, who we lovingly call music muggles, we do get into the weeds about some geeky trumpet and music stuff. But I think overall we stuck to topics that apply to pretty much anything in life that one tries to really master or get good at. Trumpet players get a bad reputation for being the meatheads of the orchestra, but Scott is a great example of how not true that is, or at least how not true that can be. All right, if you like what you hear, you can always support us by sharing it with someone or leaving a review. And if you really want to support us, you can click the link to our support page in the episode notes, where you can make a donation through our secure PayPal link. Either way, thanks for listening, thanks to Scott for coming on, and hope you enjoy the episode.
Take two.
All right. Well, Scott Moore, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I usually, after we record, attach some kind of intro with a more basic bio of whoever we're interviewing. Can you give a more personal account of who you are, your general life path, and what you've been up to, kind of thing?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm principal trumpet at the Memphis Symphony. I've been in Memphis since 1988. So, that's a long time.
That's a year before I was born.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. But, I love Memphis. I love my colleagues. We have a great concert hall. The orchestra sounds really good. Everything's great. So, I'm very happy. It's, when I grew up in Mississippi, and, there's a joke around here that Memphis is the largest city in Mississippi because most people move, if they want to go to the big city, they go to Memphis because it's literally, I can get there in 15 minutes from my house.
That's awesome.
But it's, I of course didn't come here from Mississippi. I mean, I went to school. I started college in Mississippi at Delta State University, a great trumpet teacher at the time. His name was Mike Ewald. And then halfway through my bachelor's, he took a job down in Louisiana at Lake Charles, Louisiana at McNeese State University. So I followed him down there, finished my bachelor's. Mm-hmm. He wound up going to University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana after that. And he died of cancer about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I went to see him the night before he died. He was a great mentor to me, really kind of a father to me in so many ways. Mm-hmm. Then I went to do my master's at New England Conservatory. Loved it. It was like culture shock in the best ways possible.
Yeah.
I was an usher at Symphony Hall, so I heard the Boston Symphony and orchestras from all over the world several nights a week. And, it was just a great experience that way. The colleagues that I had there, the other trumpet players were all, we decided that, because there were like 9 trumpet players in each orchestra. So we decided, one concert, all you might play is like second trumpet on a Mozart piano concerto or something. So we decided if we're not on stage, we're going to meet downstairs in this room, and we play for each other and played, with each other and stuff, and busted each other's chops. And it was a great group, and just about everybody in there, has gone on to have good careers, So yeah. I think I credit, that group of guys for, really for my still playing the trumpet,
I think non-musicians don't realize how sort of tight you can form groups with your own instrument when in school. It becomes like the studio becomes almost like a sports team type of group bonding.
It's true, because going from a liberal arts school, then going to a conservatory for my master's, it's like, all of a sudden I was a brass player. So I was kind of like, that's analogous to being a jock at a liberal arts school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of a whole different dynamic, but it was great fun,
Why do you think that
Austin's
is that the trumpet player, brass player mentality we get associated as being the jocks of the orchestra?
Oh, there's so many different reasons for it. I mean, I think it comes from, our need to play with confidence, because we play loudly and, even when we're playing soft, it's louder than a lot of other instruments. And so we have we have to have confidence when we play. And we also have to have a thick skin because mistakes are going to happen. And, when those mistakes happen, if you dwell on it, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So you have to always keep that confidence, but confidence comes from preparation, of course, But, I think that's kind of where that mentality comes from because of the thick skin we have to develop because our mistakes are so apparent to everyone that, we kind of do develop naturally a swagger.
Yeah, the swagger. So, I think that's what I picked up from you when I came to the Hot Springs Music Festival in 2014. It was the year before I started my master's, because that was, it was the year before I started. And before that, I don't know, maybe you remember, I came in a little bit more of a timid kind of defensive player. And I feel like you really injected that, you just got to do it. And
that's right.
I think you found a good way to convert the nervous energy that you feel as a brass player into that, fuck it, go kind of energy. I
mean, yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that paid off for you because I'm telling you what, man, if you don't conquer that demon, it's a, I've seen guys, just completely drive themselves bonkers.
Yeah.
Playing the trumpet, because it's, you sit and you sit and you sit and then you gotta, wake everybody up and let them know it's time to go home. So, it's I love it. I just absolutely love playing the trumpet. It's like this is what I wanted to do when I was a kid. Now I get to do it. So, why not have fun with it? You know, I'm not gonna torture myself with all the things that can go wrong because I've done all those things. I've made all the mistakes, and I'm still kicking. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's something about once you've made a giant mistake, then it's like, well, I still just went home and ate dinner. Like nothing.
That's true.
Your brain sets up this life or death. Like I remember the first time I've been doing mostly Baroque trumpet stuff for the last few years. So the first time I played first on Messiah, that the trumpet shall sound like failure mode was just like in the front of my brain all the time. Like, okay, I could hit full fatigue halfway through and then be in survival mode and sound on Baroque trumpet, especially when you get fully tired.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh God, it's just like, it can be a nightmare. And I don't know, I think in one of the performances, I did get pretty tired, but then it just still went on because there's something about that performance mode energy that your body finds a way.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And then after that, I was like, okay, if I can trust somewhere, almost like a religious like trust, like my body will find a way in the heat of battle, you sort of find this different, I don't know, my teacher at Stony Brook, Kevin Cobb, used to call it the fuck it energy too. He's just like, you got to just feel that like, whatever. It is what it is, and just breathe and play, There's something I think that's that right. The general population of people could learn from trumpet players in terms of that. I don't know how to export it into regular wisdom, but...
Yeah, I was going to say...
Well, there's so much of it in sports psychology, Yeah. I mean, it kind of permeates that field as well, and the fuck it energy comes after, preparation, lots of adequate preparation. And, there are times when, you work and you work and you work on something, but it's, you get like almost there. And then there's something about getting in front of your colleagues for a rehearsal that like pushes it over the edge, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, nobody wants to screw up in front of their friends. You know?
Yeah. You get that extra little percentage.
In front of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
I was saying, like, you're so right. You get that extra percentage of ability somehow in the moment of, I have to perform in front of people in a rehearsal or in front of an audience for a concert. Something changes. I haven't quite figured it out, but I'm so much better at performing in concerts than I am at auditioning, that's for sure. Something I still have to figure out how to make a shift.
Me too.
You know, there are two different skills, you know,
Yeah.
but the thing is that all the things that you work on to prepare your auditions, you know, all of those skills translate into good performances, though. You know, you work on your rhythm, your intonation, your evenness, you know, all those things that, you know, help prepare you to take a good audition, also help you be a good performer. So, you know, it's not mutually exclusive, but they are different skills. It's a completely different mindset. And I found that, you know, I mean, you know, when I was, you know, doing really well at major auditions, you know, I called myself the Greg Norman of the trumpet world for a while because I was coming in second everywhere, you know. But, you know, so people want to take lessons on auditions. I tell them that, you know, I always joke that I can teach you to be runner-up for every major orchestra in the country. But, you know, anyway, so, but, you know, when I was, you know, playing at a high level for auditions, I found that what I did was I prepared the audition experience, and that's a lot of visualization and a lot of, you know, I did all of my practicing from warming up to, you know, running the lists in big rooms, you know, a church or something like that. They'd let me come use their sanctuary or something. So I get used to playing in a big room, you know. So, I mean, my practice room here has got like a, you know, 7-foot ceiling or something, you know. It's small.
Oh, nice.
And, you know, so it's just kind of harsh and dead, you know. And then when I go down to the hall, it's like, oh, wait, yeah. So, you know, so you have to really, you know, preparing an audition, it's like you have to prepare the audition, not the excerpts. You know what I'm saying? You have to prepare how you're going to play that audition. And that involves just running through everything without stopping, just like you would on audition day. Because if you stop, you clam a note in the middle of Petrushka, then you stop and you fix it, you've given yourself permission to screw up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to practice going through no matter what, you know? And then when you finish running whatever list you picked out for yourself, then you say, okay, what did I screw up this time? I'm not going to do that next time. You know, and that's really all you need to do. You know how not to clam that note in the middle of Petrushka because you've done it thousands of times without clamming. You just have to have that in your mind, you know. So,
was there like a mental shift that you experienced before winning this job, or you think it was just time, like it just randomly happened, like that you were in a runner-up all of a sudden you just had the job?
in Memphis? Yeah.
You changed?
Well, see, Memphis was a different situation. The runner-up things I was talking about was after I was in Memphis, you know, so, you know, trying to make that next step, you know, because let's face it, you know, most people dream about being in Chicago Symphony or Boston Symphony or whatever. And, you know, so I was in Memphis and, you know, like I said, I enjoy Memphis, but, you know, you dream about Chicago Symphony or whatnot, you know?
Yeah.
So those were the ones where I was, you know, a good friend of mine who I went to NEC with, when I saw him at the semifinals, I guess, for a job in Chicago, fourth trumpet, I think it was, and so they came out and announced the finalists, and I was one of them, and I just kind of did this, like, you know, fist clench, and you know, and my friend told me later that he said he went into his dressing room and he looked in the mirror and he goes, I don't have that look that Scott has, you know, that like, you know, eye of the tiger thing, which I had at that time. That was the mental shift, you know. Now, you know, I haven't, you know, I retired from competitive trumpet playing, you know, years and years ago, probably 15 years ago at least, you know, and I feel like I'm playing better now than I ever have. I'm learning stuff every day, which is very exciting. But, you know, for me to take an audition now at my age, it's just kind of like, you know, it's more of a, why do I got to do this bullshit kind of thing? It's not so much of a competitive game for me anymore. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like I've been on the other side of that curtain, and I know what kind of bullshit goes on back there. And it's just it annoys me if I were to have to do something like that. Of course, I've got a good life here, and like I say, I'm too old for a change. So
am I too young to already be thinking like, oh,
I was about to say the same thing. I'm in a new world. I'm already thinking of it. I'm like, fuck this shit.
Like, I don't know. I feel like the Baroque music world that I've been doing has the mindset you just described, like just kind of embedded in it, of where people are just like, all right, this is less about competition and more about just finding the beauty and being present and that kind of thing. I don't know if that's,
there you go.
It's possible that as the Baroque early music wave gets more and more popular and it comes to more and more universities, that it will be embedded into the whole competitive hierarchy of music. But it sort of is like half that and half not that still. It's very much personal connections, and people seem to value that sort of more zoomed out artistic thing than like the perfection of audition type training. I don't know. I was...
Well, that's good. And look, auditions don't have to be perfect either. Just like performances, because let's face it, like I say, I've been on the other side of that curtain, and I'm not sitting there making tick marks every time somebody clams a note or whatnot. I've literally sat in auditions where I hear somebody play a warm-up arpeggio, and I write no at the top and turn it over, because you can tell from the sound and the bad pitch on playing on a warm-up arpeggio, that's not going to work in our band. You know what I'm saying? So
it almost tells you more than the perfect excerpt they play right after it.
Sometimes the thing is, nobody's going to play a quote unquote perfect excerpt after a warm-up like that, because let's face it, there's a certain this Dunning-Kruger effect. Everybody, people don't realize the things that they're not doing well.
And the more the amazing thing about the Dunning-Kruger thing is, like, the more of an expert you are, the more humble you are about your knowledge, and the less of an expert are, the more like an expert you act.
Absolutely, 100%.
But that's what's so. It's almost like a trap for when you're ignorant of. Let's say you play a certain way and you don't know how that's coming across. You're less likely to find out about it because you're so believing some other version of reality or something. I don't know. I feel like self-awareness is really important in music, but it can also be a curse when it flies out of control and you become like, imposter syndrome kind of thing. Like, wait, should I really be here? Do I suck? Like,
100%. I play this music festival every February in Arizona Music Fest. It's just like this ridiculous orchestra that nobody's ever heard of. It's like, players from New York and Chicago and Cleveland and the Met.
I saw you post that on Facebook one year. I was like, what? That's the roster here? What the hell? I've never heard of this.
It's just ridiculous. Chris Martin's been out there, and Billy Gerlach from National Symphony comes out a lot. And this last year, Conrad Jones came, principal at Indianapolis. Okay. He is just such a great guy and just a sweet player. Just amazing.
He grew up on Long Island.
Musical guy.
Like pretty close to where I grew up.
That's right. He did. That's right. Yeah. And so we were talking one night, and he says, I'm working on your shortcomings is something that's very important, but it's almost, you reach a point where it starts to become self-defeating. It's like, because then it starts to eat at your confidence. It's like, wow, I just really can't, triple tongue any faster, or whatever it is that you're working on, so it has to be balanced with a lot of stuff that kind of keeps your confidence level high. Yeah. And I was like, such a great insight. And the funny thing is, I tried to recruit him for Hot Springs one year, and then he went and won a job, I think in Tucson or something like that. So he was too busy. So, but, and here we were, a few years later, bonding like that as peers. It was just really kind of a cool experience, so.
I think that what you just said is like that I've come to this realization over the past year a lot, and it's kind of the philosophy of this podcast we tried to make, which is that every value needs some kind of competing value to keep it in check. So like the Kodawari philosophy is the idea of like aiming at perfection, attending to all the details along the way, but it has this other part of like also know that you cannot achieve it, but still attempt the achieving it anyways. And it's the knowledge that you can't achieve it, which makes you, like in a performance, for example, just let go and go lift up your legs and float downstream and just see what happens, because you have to have that letting go combined with the fight of perfection and aiming and details and all of that stuff. That's probably what he was talking about. Like the inner critic needs the inner Buddha that also loves you or something, you know?
I mean, yeah, it's like I've often said that trumpet players, you know, have confidence and self-doubt in abundance, you know, both of those things kind of coexist at the same time, you know, and I think most good musicians do as well, you know, because we're highly self-critical. And it took me a while, and I think it takes most musicians a while. Some people never reach this point where they are able to walk off stage and go, wow, that was really great, you know, because it's like, you know, we're always driven for perfection. You know, we're driving for perfection all our lives. And it's difficult sometimes to just stand back and go, all right, nailed it. That was great, you know, because we still walk off stage remembering that clam we had or something, you know. And, you know, so, you know, sometimes we have to cut ourselves a little bit of slack to enjoy the moment and realize, hey, we're doing what we do. We did Mahler 5, a couple of seasons ago. I forget when it was. A couple of seasons ago maybe. And right before the conductor walked out, I turned to our principal trombone player. I'm like, hey, what did you want to do when you were a kid? He goes, well, I guess this right here. I'm like, damn right. And we're fucking doing it. Yeah. We're playing Mahler 5 right now. You know? I mean, that's where it's at, you know?
You have those like out-of-body
I'm not going to sit there and be nervous about... Yeah, it's like, you know, look, it's like the bottom of the 9th inning in the 7th game of the World Series, score tied, you know? Yeah. There are two kinds of players. They're the ones who go, this is what I've dreamed about my whole life. I hope I don't fuck it up. And then there's the guys who are like, this is what I dreamed about my whole life, and now I get to live it for real, you know? Who's going to win the game? Yeah. Those second guys, right? And so you got to enjoy it when you're in the moment, because you got to remember this is what we've always wanted to do, and we're doing it, you know? So, but, you know, then the next day, okay, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix that? You know?
Yeah, you wake up, have a cup of coffee, and then go, all right, this is what went wrong. I've got a week before the next thing. How can I address it? You know, yeah, it's funny. It's
yeah, you know, so I'm really into, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's that's opposite idea I really love. I think it was Niels Bohr, this famous like physicist or particle physicist. He said, the opposite of a shallow truth is a falsehood, but the opposite of a deep truth is another truth. And it's like, you should be critical of your playing and always seek to improve yourself. That's true. You should just be in the moment and love everything that's coming out of your playing and just go with the flow. That's also true. But they're obviously a contradiction there, but at the deep level, you have to be both at the same time. It's like two sides of the same coin kind of thing. I found the critic much easier to be than the love my playing person.
Oh, I mean, same.
I mean, she'll have amazing performances and then be pissed off. I'll be like, dude, that sounded amazing. What are you mad about?
Everybody is like, I don't know, like you're not hearing certain things, but I think what I was going to ask was, did you have to do any work to like dial down that self-doubting sound, or it just kind of disappears as you have more experience? Because I can't seem to get a hold of it right now. Like personally, I'm always like,
well, terrible. Yeah. I got into, you know, 15 years ago or so, I got into a real funk. You know, personal life upheaval usually causes, you know, issues, you know, going through a divorce. And so it kind of, you know, crept into my playing as well. And, you know, it just kind of starts with one little thing, and then it just kind of snowballs from there. And you try to fix it, and things get worse and worse and worse. Yeah. And my playing just fell apart. It was awful. It was embarrassing. I mean, it was my tonguing for the most part. You know, it got to the point where I couldn't play William Tell Overture. I was like, and it was just embarrassing. So, I filled out an application for culinary school. I was going to quit trumpet and go be a chef because I figured I already worked crazy hours for no money, so I might as well, be a chef. But I started. I had some golf clubs, but I hadn't really played much. After my first daughter was born, I started playing when I was like 30 or so, and then my daughter was born a year or two later, and I kind of put them in the closet, next 15, 16 years. And so, I decided one summer, I was like, okay, I'm going to take my golf clubs and try to figure this game out, And so I remember I'd be practicing, and I took this lesson with this old guy. He hung around at this city golf course. And the whole time he was just like, slow down, take it easy, let the club do the work, don't try to kill it, all this kind of stuff. And when I was done, I was like, that was the best trumpet lesson I've ever had. Nice. And I went home and I wrote down all this stuff, and I realized, the trumpet's got a sweet spot just like a golf club. If you hit that sweet spot on the golf club, the ball just goes nice and straight and far with very little effort, And that's the same with the trumpet. If you hit that resonant sweet spot where there's a physical, acoustical value that determines where this piece of pipe will resonate at 240. Or, at 440. You know what I'm saying? So, you see people with their tuning slides out, 2 inches. That's telling me that they're pinching and they're
that's actually one of the biggest shifts in my playing is I was playing Don Juan for you, and you were like, what the hell is your tuning slide out that far for? And you pushed it in. You're like, just sit down on the pitch. And I was like, whoa. And it took me a couple practice sessions to adjust where my center was, but that's still where my tuning slide is today.
Good for you, man. That's like such a huge issue with most trumpet players. Because let's face it, trumpet players are not told that they're flat very often, right? Always sharp. And that's because we want to control everything. We're like squeezing down, and we think we have to project by getting that tight, narrow, bright sound. But, if you hear a singer like that, we've all heard that tenor is like, and just like, he thinks he's projecting because he's got his, voice all squeezed tight, but nobody wants to hear that shit, man. You want it to have as much resonance and life as possible. And the way to do that is hit where that instrument wants to resonate. Yeah. All right. And if you're not hitting that spot, you're forcing the instrument and to you're basically turning the trumpet into an amplifier instead of an oscillator, which is what it really is, right? It oscillates pitches from standing waves that we create in the instrument through the buzzing of our lips. It creates a standing wave, and that's how we get the maximum resonance with minimum effort.
Yeah. And my teacher, Kevin Cobb, would always describe that phenomena as like if you had a beach ball floating on water and you put your hand on it, you would find this natural, you push down a little bit, it pushes back up, and there's this just natural balance that you find when you're in that resonance space. If you're trying to hold the beach ball underwater, it's unstable and that's right. And if you're not touching it at all, it just floats away from you. You're not grounded in anything. So there's this balance there. It's the same thing really that we were just talking about, competing opposite forces, right? It's like if you're too open, you have this airy sound that doesn't pass in the classical world. But if you're trying to be that tenor with the perfect, whatever, then you're just tight and there's no freedom to your sound. There's no resonance or whatever.
Well, I think the instrument, can find its own, if we allow it to find its center, then, you said something about big and airy, airy is usually when you're, that's another way of not being in the resonant center of the pitch, So, people talk a lot about core, as brass players. They talk about getting the core, and they talk about centering the pitch, but I don't think centering should be used as a verb necessarily for the trumpet, because it makes people feel like they have to do something, they have to like bring this sound in like it's, look, man, we're blowing through this tiny little, the throat and the mouthpiece is tiny. The cup and a trumpet mouthpiece, compare it to, a trombone mouthpiece, trombone's twice as long as a trumpet, but the mouthpiece is 4 times bigger.
Right.
So we're getting quite a big advantage there, or disadvantage, as the case may be.
Advantage if you
so
find the advantage, right?
It's not like the sound is going to go flopping down the street or anything, if we just kind of let things go. I mean, that's really what it's all about, is letting it go, having the, being completely, not completely, but, as much as possible, relaxed enough to just kind of let the sound go, let the lips vibrate so that response happens immediately. When, the air and the lips and the instrument, they all come at the same exact time, you have that instantaneous response. That's when you're hitting the center of the instrument. Response problems only happen for one reason, and that's when the lip and the instrument are in disagreement with each other. All right, your lip wants to vibrate at a different spot than the instrument wants to vibrate. Your lips are wrong, and you're going to get that fa until you find the instrument or you force the instrument to be somewhere where it doesn't want to be.
I can so relate with all this that you're talking about, with my personal experience with left hand, right hand tension. It's just is eye-opening. I'm yes, I need to just constantly focus on that. But when you start to self-doubt, those just always go to the, back of your mind. You just stop thinking of all that. But it's really relatable.
Oh yeah, I mean, when shit gets going bad, when you get in the middle of the heat of battle, sometimes, it's like your worst tendencies kind of take over, because we spend our whole lives doing something incorrectly. Then we take it to that next level where we're doing it more correctly. And it's but then you get in the heat of battle and you just you go back to what you know.
Yes.
And you want to control it, but controlling it is when you clamp down, and that is what causes response to not happen.
Yeah.
It causes you to go sharp, all this.
And then there's a cascading effect of all these negative things. When response is off, you start getting tighter, and then tighter, more tightness, it's worse response, and then you're just a miserable trumpet player, violin player.
Yeah.
This would be a good time. What are you drinking, by the way?
Well, let's see. My cocktail is called the Ardbeg Ugadal.
Gotcha.
Nice.
with a tiny splash of water. We have a non-alcoholic version of this in the show notes. It's called a splash of water. But now one of the things I've got, everybody's got their little pandemic projects. I've kind of gotten into the single malt Scotch, especially from Islay, because I always have liked Lagavulin. So there's so many distilleries in Scotland, and I decided, okay, I'm going to kind of start with what I know, and so.
And have you found you've built this database of noticing more and more subtlety of differences?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating. Just the other day I was doing a little testing of my old Lagavulin, which I've drank for years. And I was like, holy crap, there's licorice in there. I never noticed that before. Little things like that, So it's just kind of fascinating to kind of start to get into that a little bit,
I think musicians are particularly good at getting into things, whether that's cooking or cocktails or wine. We have the mindset that we apply it to music for 30 years or whatever it is. And then it's all right, where else can I put this perfection beam and master something else? 'Cause,
Right.
I got really into cocktails in the quarantine, that's for sure.
Yeah. I did too. Buddy and I we would text each other pictures of our latest cocktail creations and so forth. But when winter hit, that's when I kind of got into just single malt scotches. But before that, I was doing all kinds of cocktails. In summertime, it's all gin around here. So different martinis and Negronis and.
I have to have a re-meeting with gin. I had a bad experience with gin when I was younger, and it's still tagged in that memory somewhere that It doesn't. I'm scared of it.
Interesting.
From one experience,
most people have a tequila story, but
my tequila stories are great. Story. Knock on wood.
Oh yeah.
Normally we would be having margaritas on Margarita Monday, as we've come to call it.
All right. Yes.
We were out of tequila, so I just got an old fashioned.
Today.
Nice with Rittenhouse. Weirdly enough, some of the just cheaper $30 bottles of rye taste the best when you're mixing cocktails. I've found you don't need to be spending too much money to get a really good mixed drink.
I agree. I don't spend a lot of money. I mean, if I'm going to mix something in a cocktail, I'm not going to spend a lot of money on it. That's for sure.
I found that getting into cocktails reminded me of, let's say you're in a chamber music group and you're trying to balance the different voices of a chord or something. have these different voices of a cocktail, like the heat of the alcohol, the sweetness, the bitterness, and depending on the cocktail category, it might have not one of those, but like she likes her margaritas without any sweetness, actually. I mean, obviously the Cointreau has some sweetness to it, but I like to put a little agave nectar mixed in as well. And you're just playing with these different things and trying to find a balance. I found it very similar to what you try to do when you're balancing a chord in a string quartet or a brass quintet or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like a margarita with the 3-2-1 ratio, 3 of tequila, 2 of Cointreau or Grand Marnier, and 1 of lime juice. Mm-hmm. And I don't add any extra sweetener in either. So, because to me, there's plenty in the Cointreau.
It's true. Yeah. The Cointreau is pretty, we were looking up because she's like, oh, like maybe I should be trying to have less sugar. Like it affects me kind of weird. I was like, well, let's see how much sugar the margarita has without adding any agave. And I was like, it's still got like 7 grams sugar, like just from the Cointreau alone.
That's true.
So speaking of playing problems, I went through one. Was this 2016 or 17? I got really sick with it was just a sore throat, and I kind of ignored it. Then there was like an orchestra concert, so I extra ignored it. I was like, I don't have time to deal with this. And then the day after the concert, I think it was pictures at an exhibition, I woke up and I was like, I messed up. Like it felt awful. So
yeah, you weren't able to play for a while. I remember
it was like 2 weeks. I just couldn't play it. It went into like, what is it? The
strep throat.
Strep throat becomes the other thing when whatever. And when I came back to playing, it felt bad, but like, all right, whatever. This makes sense. Next day, still whatever. But then I was like, I can't get out of the staff. I can't play high. I can't find my sound. And then the more problems there were, and all of a sudden, I was like, wait, am I done with trumpet? I can't play. Like I've been working at this problem. It was the year after school, so I was basically just teaching and gigging around the area, but I didn't have any gigs for that month. I canceled a few because I couldn't play. I remember playing one concert on campus for some whatever ceremony for the dentist department or something. And I just took everything down an octave. I told my friends, like, I'm going through something here, like, but I can still play the gig. They won't know what's going on. And that kept going for about 2 to 3 weeks. Then I was supposed to play La Boheme at the end of the month. And I was like, I'm about to say I can't do it. And I went to warm up one morning, and this flash kind of went through my mind of what it felt like to play when things felt good. And I just picked up the instrument, and then it was back. And so that it both was awesome in the sense that the memory of that I found like the track. It was like the train tracks just needed to find the right switch or whatever. But it also terrified me that can happen, that one little misalignment became like I was somewhere totally different, and I was just paralyzed. Like I went to start a note, and I was like I couldn't even just play a piano. Like is that?
Well, now you're a real trumpet player.
Do you think that's a rite of passage for a trumpet player?
Yeah, you're not a real trumpet. You're not a real trumpet player until you go through something like that, dude. I have gone through so many phases like that. I mean, I've changed my embouchure a few times. I mean, Look, I changed it, I guess, my junior year of college. Then I changed it right before grad school, and then little tweaks here and there, as I discovered the role of it, And before each one of those times, I did it because I had completely broken down, And then, of course, when I went through my whole thing 15 years ago, when I almost quit, discovering the secret by hitting golf balls and realizing that it's all about letting the equipment do the work and finding the sweet spot and all that kind of stuff, So yeah, I've been through several phases like that, and each one has made me more aware of what the most efficient ways are to play the trumpet, for me especially, but I truly believe that there are some things that I've learned over the years that are pretty much universal among for the best ways to play a brass instrument in general. Yeah. So,
but yet at the same time, each person has to personally find that for themselves, I feel like, because it's slightly different for everyone.
In a lot of ways, that's true.
I mean, there's a lot of
We're all
similarities
handicapped,
too,
I
of
think,
course.
by the we're all handicapped by the way we start off as beginners. You know, we start with everybody pretty much has a Rubank beginner band method or whatnot, and the first thing we do, what's the first note you play on the trumpet?
Low C, probably.
What's the first note you played?
I think it was a low C.
Exactly. That low C, concert B flat. Absolutely. That's every beginner band method book you have is going to have that low concert B flat, C on trumpet. And what's the best way to do that is, you know, when you're a kid, you play, blow a raspberry, the inside of your lips, and then try to play high. You can't do it, right? Because, to play high from that position, you have to you start to squeeze like a drawstring. And it starts off, as you play higher, you start off learning I have to work really hard and squeeze hard to play high. Mm-hmm. And so if beginners are taught to start with a good embouchure where, the inside of the lip is, tucked in. If you look at the embouchures of all the great players who have longevity and, clear sounds, good range, evenness from high to low, Wayne Bergeron, Doc Severinsen, Wynton Marsalis, all these guys I can go on and on, but they all have that same kind of setup, and they're keeping that lip out of the mouthpiece. But when we start in beginner band, lips going into the mouthpiece, and it just really makes things more difficult for everyone. So we say burn all those books and start all over.
I mean, I've started a lot of students now. I've been teaching for since I was in undergrad, so probably 12 years or so, and I've played around with different experiments. And the best I found that the best students are when they don't get poisoned with other information from school. Unfortunately, they'll come to me and I'll be like, "What are you doing?"
And sometimes even that, sometimes you can't even help that though. You'll teach them, you'll set them up correctly, and then they'll come back and say, "Well, my band director told me to do
exactly."
This." Their band director's not even a trumpet player, but what can you do?
They're a flute player who was probably maybe okay at flute. And then they played trumpet for 2 weeks as part of their degree. And then they're telling the kids, pinch your lips for the high notes, which is the opposite of what I tell them. And I wonder if I was programmed with something like that somewhere deep in my psychology. And there's always, I'm always in tension with that because it's those things, they become part of who you are, but they're not like a memory. It's like a detailed memory that you remember. It's just part of what you think you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Something very similar in violin technique. So they start us in the first position, right? First finger, second finger. So for forever, we don't explore any other positions. And then we start like being afraid of the high positions. And then everybody's like, oh, I'm going to play out of tune, like tension, this, that. So there's this like Finnish violin method, like that's just came out in, I think, late 90s, like very recent. They start the kids on fourth position with the harmonics. So you don't have like any fear of heights, basically.
What's it called?
ColourStrings.
Yeah, the ColourStrings. I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Anyway, those kids apparently right now in like 2020, like they're just acing like the top jobs and everything. Fearless, incredible. Like just they prime them in such a different way apparently. So good for them.
Yeah. However you start, it probably has an effect. It cascades down to be your framework for how you view trumpet. Like we start on low C, so the stuff higher than that is the high notes that are scary. It's like I try to tell my students,
absolutely,
high notes are high frequency notes. They're not up there. They're not these. This new thing I've been really thinking about with students and with myself is flinching. There's a book called The Flinch, and one of the chapters is about cold showers, which we've gotten really into cold showers. And the first time you take a cold shower, your body flinches away from it. And then you can teach yourself over time that the cold water hits you and you just open up your shoulders and you don't flinch away. And I feel like that's what we do as trumpet players. Sometimes we flinch away from high notes or something difficult that we're scared of. And we don't realize that our shoulders are coming in, our air is not going forward as much. And we're just we're in that defensive scared position. And I don't know, maybe that's just wired into us from starting with the Rubank band methods where it's like low C is fine, have fun with that. But the third space C in the middle of the staff, they call high C. It's like, what?
Yeah, right. No, you're right. It's look, what does a therapist start with when you go to start therapy? They start with childhood, right? Yeah. So, everything stems from how you first learn something, and it's so impossible to unlearn things, I used to go see Arnold Jacobs in the summers after I came to Memphis, so we're talking 1990 for the next 3 or 4 years at least. He would always talk about how, we're not talking about getting rid of old habits. We're talking about adding new habits, And I thought that was always a good way to approach things.
Yeah, maybe it's not possible to get rid of bad habits. I think
no, that was his whole point. That if you concentrate on that, it's not going to happen. So
I think there was a neuroscientist that studied this. I remember he gave a lecture. He's a neuroscientist, but he's also quite an accomplished piano soloist. I forget his name, but he's Israeli, and he came and did a lecture at Stony Brook when I was there, and that was his main argument, is that you cannot delete a bad habit like it's a computer hard drive from your brain. You can replace it with a better habit through repetition, make that the most likely path that your nerve impulses will cascade down, but the other one's still there. And it will, it's sort of like paths in the woods. If you walk a certain path through the woods, even if you don't make a path there, it starts to become a path because everyone's walking along the same pathway, but you can't just delete it. I found that model when I shifted my thinking to be like, I can't, if you try to not do something, you're like, don't think about like a zebra. It's like, well, now I'm thinking about a zebra. I can't not think about something. It's yet more tension and thinking. And
there's, as I got into golf, there's a book that really helped me somewhat with golf, but a lot with trumpet. It's called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect by Bob Rotella. And, so he talks about that same type of thing. He says, the brain does not understand the word don't. Like don't hit it in the water. What are you going to do? You're going to hit it in the water. So, and it's the same with trumpet. Don't clam the high C. Your brain hears clam the high C.
Yeah.
So, it's, and it's, it's such a mind game, playing music, playing golf. It's just all the same thing, you really, Rotella talks about another thing in this thing. He did a lot of work with Jack Nicklaus, who, is one of the most majors of any golfer in history, widely considered to be the greatest golfer. I think Tiger, even though he's still 3 majors short, but still. Anyway, so he's at a conference with Jack Nicklaus, and Jack Nicklaus said something. I can't remember exactly the details, but Jack Nicklaus said something about, I've never blown a lead on Sunday when I've gone to the final round leading by 3 strokes. And so some guy in the audience comes up to Bob Rotella, who was co-presenting this seminar with Jack Nicklaus. And so this guy from the audience came up to him and goes, Jack Nicklaus is wrong, he named some tournament where he blew the lead, like that. And so Bob Rotella goes to the guy, he goes, what's your golf handicap? And the guy goes, well, I'm about a 16, which is like, it means he shoots in the high 80s, low 90s or something like that. And the guy goes, okay, so you're a 16 handicap from your club, and you want me to tell Jack Nicklaus that he's thinking wrong? So the whole idea was that Jack Nicklaus forgot about the times when he failed and remember the times he succeeded. So people at peak performance create their own realities. You remember the good things and you forget the bad things. You block that stuff out of your brain, and you just focus on the good. You visualize what you want to do, and then you achieve it. And if you don't achieve it, you don't think about that because you've got something else to achieve right the next second, So
it's like the letting go thing. Maybe there's an element of like, once you understand why you made a past mistake, whatever it is, life, but performance, whatever, then you can let go of it. It's like, I've already understood it. Now I don't need that memory because I've already extracted the information I need from it. Great, let's move on. But if you don't understand why it happened 100%. To you, then it can still haunt you, right? I want to talk just a little bit about performance nerves. So you gave this little gem of advice that has stuck with me through the years. Back when in 2014, you told the story of going golfing with a friend of yours, and you were preparing for a Mahler 5 concert or some other big trumpet type of piece. And you were saying, you were nervous, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, no one's shooting at you. And then you passed that concept on to us. And it became, I find that little things like that you can just repeat to yourself, like little mantras that contain a lot of wisdom. It could be a book. Mm-hmm. You could write a book about no one's shooting at you, right? But the sentence, when you're nervous right before a performance, you go, wait a second, no one's shooting at me. I just have to play the trumpet. Like, oh, okay.
That's right. And here's, the background of that story is that's my best friend, Dustin, who we met on the golf course. He had just gotten out of the Army. He was an Army Ranger in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was a medic for, I think he was in for 6 years. So he was a medic for 5 years. And then, so he's a medic, patching up guys on the battlefield, but also, carrying a rifle and having to fight. And then last year, he said he switched to what he called preventative medicine. He became a sniper. Got the bad guys before they got our guys.
That's a funny label.
But anyway, so he moved to Memphis. He picked it off of a map. He grew up in St. Louis, and he just for some reason, I'm going to go to Memphis. And he lived next to this golf course where I would practice every morning. And it's like, here's two nutty guys out there every day when it's 40 degrees practicing our golf swings. And I'm like, okay, I got to know this guy because we're literally the only two people here for the whole week, right? But anyway, so he had been in the shit and the Middle East. And so that was when he had a bad golf shot, that's what he would say. Nobody's shooting at me, and that was like some of the most powerful perspective I've ever gotten. Even better story about Dustin. A few years ago, I got diagnosed with IgA nephropathy, which is a autoimmune disease that affects the kidneys. And my kidney function completely declined to the point where they were gone. And Dustin gave me a kidney. He tested.
That nobody's shooting at you guys, your kidney donor.
That's right.
That's funny because I've legit kept that nobody's shooting at you as it's in my vocabulary as a teacher and as a player.
That's great. He's going to be very happy to hear that. I'm going to text him as soon as we're done.
Awesome.
Tell him that. I tell that story almost every day. I told it yesterday on the golf course to a guy I met on the golf course. But it's such a great piece of perspective, But so he tested and we were such a good match, I couldn't believe. He's a better match than my daughters might have been, but they weren't really eligible. But since it's an autoimmune disease, family donor, we share common DNA, and that heightens the chance that the disease comes back. Which it probably will someday, but knock on wood, hopefully they will be for a while.
Yeah.
But
that nobody shooting at you thing, I remember also the last night of Hot Springs Festival, we went out for beers and stuff, and my flight was like one of those 6 a.m. flights, and
right.
I was sort of looking at it like, well, the concert ends at 10. I'm not going to not say goodbye to everyone, so I'm kind of just sacrificing. I probably won't sleep, or if I do, it'll be for an hour or whatever. So we all got back at like 2 a.m. I slept till probably 3:30, and then the van picked up whoever was going to the airport. And I got there plenty early, like 6 a.m. flight. I think we got there at 4:45 or something. The airport was empty. And then suddenly the computers broke down. And I'm sitting there, and I'm a nervous flyer anyway. So any airport day, I'm just on edge anxiety-wise. And I'm thinking, I wasn't flying a lot back then, so I didn't even know, if I just don't get to the gate on time, am I just screwed? Am I just going to have to fork over $300 to, I didn't know they would, make all the arrangements for you if they mess up. But their computers crashed, and we're just sitting there. We can't check our bags and whatever. I ended up missing the flight. But that little wisdom, popped into my mind as I'm, sitting there, my heart's beating. I'm like, what do I do? And then I was like, oh, yeah. No one's shooting at me. I was probably still a little drunk, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
that's Hot Springs for you. Man.
So yeah, it's funny that I didn't know that Dustin is his name?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that was the nobody shooting at you wisdom. Yeah, definitely tell him. Like, I legit think about that at least probably once a day. Like because it works not just for music, just anytime you're stressed out about something.
Absolutely.
You're like,
it's the best
zoom out,
perspective
no one's
there
shooting at me.
is. That's right. And of course, now my daughter is in the Army, but I mean, she plays fife in the Army, so it's not like anybody's going to be shooting at her. But,
Right.
She did have to, like, during that, when they brought in the National Guard in last summer, when Trump wanted to do his,
So was
bullshit.
she in D.C.?
She had to, like, help check in. Yeah. She's stationed at Fort Myer, which is right next to Arlington Cemetery. So her unit, she's in the U.S. Army Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. And so her unit is part of the Old Guard, which, they also have the tomb sentries for the unknown soldiers and the Tomb of the Unknowns, they call it. And also the caissons, the horses and all that kind of stuff. So it's, it's a really cool unit. But yeah.
Do you have time for some bonus questions?
Absolutely.
Now, here's the policy for bonus questions. Feel free to be like, boom, I'm not answering that. I'll go from really like funny questions to like, what happens when you die type questions. So feel free to be like, no comment. So the first one I usually ask is, what's the most profound thing that you've changed your mind on over the course of your life?
Most profound thing I've changed my mind on. Well, I mean, good Lord, I grew up in Mississippi, Southern Baptist in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. I would say everything. I was telling somebody yesterday how some of my friends that I grew up with will find me on Facebook. Oh my God, it's so great to find you on Facebook. And then they look at my Facebook page and then they unfriend me, because I'm not marching on the Capitol with them or something. I would say the most profound thing is, I've always been interested in religion and people's, in our need for the higher power and all that kind of stuff. And I grew up, it's like Southern Baptist. It was like, this is it, or you burn in hell forever. And I'm an Episcopalian now. A friend of mine asked me once, I said, are you religious? I said, no, I'm an Episcopalian. So it's a very, it's a, Episcopalian church is really a community of people who are united. Yes, we all have we all have this central belief, but it's really more about a community that supports each other, rather than do we really believe, this and this and that, So the Episcopal Church is very good about exploring, the scholarship on how the Bible was put together. So we'll talk about the writer of the Gospel of Mark instead of Mark, because who knows who wrote that? That stuff was put in later.
But the wisdom can still be the wisdom.
And they're not threatened by that kind of stuff. It's like I told my daughters, the things, the teachings in there still make sense today. But if you want to look at it as a rule book for how to judge other people, then no, you're not getting what the intent should be.
Right.
I think.
For me, I think it's like that difference between literal truth and metaphorical truth. Like the truth of story, like the story of Cain and Abel is like a paragraph long, but in it is just like the most beautiful life advice of like, no matter what happens to you, don't become resentful. And it tells that through story. It's not smart enough to just say it as a rule. It's even smarter to tell it as a story so that it can, even though a human being wrote that down, or let's say many generations of humans conglomerated their wisdom to write down a story like that, it's still, you can read it today and capture the wisdom from it.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And whether, but
we also have to realize that people back then did not have an understanding of, how, planets worked and how,
evolution,
science works and evolution, all that kind of stuff. It's just, so, we have to look at things in the context of when they were written.
Yeah. I mean, I've personally found an interesting, as I get older, wrestling with that question of, if someone says, do you believe in God? My first question is, what do you mean by that word God? And what do you mean by that word believe? And what do you mean by the word you? Because it's like, I'm not one thing. Certainly there's a room in my mind that believes in God. But there's another rational part of my mind that's like, can make fun of people that are too, literal with thinking religious thoughts.
Of course.
So we're this conglomeration of things, but I think being a musician, whether you know it or not, you're accessing that faith room of your mind where when you play Bach, like you can tell Bach believed in God. I don't know what his specific literal conception of God was, but I can feel probably that faith-based feeling that especially Bach trumpet parts,
Sure.
But I'm only 31, so maybe I have another 30 years to wrestle with that question. I don't know.
Well, I know when I'm playing B minor mass, I use God's name quite a bit. Not always favorable.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, other questions, bring them.
All right. Without getting into trouble with naming names, naming situations, etc., what's the craziest thing that you've ever witnessed professionally in your field?
We had a music director, and she was psychotic, all right? And I won't name names, May and Chen, but she was absolutely nuts. And at this time, I was the orchestra committee chairman. And so we have a fire alarm in our concert hall that sounds a very loud B natural with strobe lights going on. And so we're rehearsing for a concert, Rite of Spring. Fire alarm goes off. We'd had problems with her wanting to keep conducting. Or no, it was actually a guest conductor who wanted to keep conducting during the fire alarm in the performance. I'm like, we can't do this. I mean, yeah, most of the time it's some kid pulling a prank or whatnot, but still, it's a fire alarm, So we met. We had a policy. There's a fire alarm. This is what we do. We get off stage. We go out these exits, right? So happened the first time. We get off stage. It happened again. And I think the third time, the operations manager or whoever it was, stage manager, didn't come on stage like they had done before. And she just keeps conducting.
Was this all in the same
She's
night? Actually
conducting a very soft part. Yes.
Oh, wow.
So there's all kinds of crap going on with the fire alarm. So anyway, she keeps conducting, and this fire alarm is going off. It's very loud. She can't do anything because it's loud, and she's conducting something soft. What the hell is she trying to do, right? And so I'm orchestra committee chairman, and I stand up and I'm like, I'm sorry, man, we've got a fire alarm. We've got to stop. And she just screams at me, she's like, don't ever interrupt me again. This is my rehearsal. And it just went nuts. I mean, she was screaming at me. And then someone came on and says, we're on the phone with the fire department. They're, it's false alarm. They're taking care of it, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And it turned into this big thing, I mean.
Oh, I see. It was a rehearsal. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
I thought it was a performance.
At first I thought it was a concert. I was like, that's insane. But in the middle of the rehearsal, you had to get up and empty and come back.
It was a dress rehearsal. Mm-hmm. But she's like screaming at me for wanting her to stop because there was a fire alarm going on, So it's fascinating. But, the thing is this story, I mean, you know how the music world is. I mean, this is like, she had a lot of gifts, I mean, she was a very talented conductor, but she was psychotic. And so, it's like this story spread like wildfire. So there are a lot of orchestras who had been considering her who were like, ooh, no, I don't think so, So we had a consultant between executive directors who came in and was like an interim executive director. He came in and he called me in and wants to meet with the orchestra committee chairman. He goes, okay, I just came for the whatever they call it, League of American Orchestras convention. And about 10 people told me their version of the fire alarm story. So tell me what really happened. So this thing was going around every orchestra in the country, so which gave me great gratification. I'm not going to lie. So
I feel like the fire alarm thing is like the rule of a loaded gun. It's like treat every gun as if it's loaded. You can't go, but this gun's actually not loaded, so we don't have to be safe about it because I know it's not loaded. It's like the whole point of the rule is you follow it because it could be life or death, even if 90 times out of 100 it isn't.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of a fire alarm. Like, you don't tell kids in school, like, this is just a drill. Don't take it as seriously. You program that in. Like, if a fire alarm goes off, you get out of the building. If you're holding a gun, treat it like it's loaded. Yep. Even if you emptied the chamber yourself and you just did it, you still follow that rule because it will be safer, even if it's not literally accurate to,
That's right. Yeah, another fire alarm story that we had, we did have some problems with it.
It sounds like the fire alarm had a problem.
But this was in a performance, actually. I think it was a school performance. So, the hall was full of school kids. And we were playing Leonore 3. So I go off stage and I'm playing the Leonore call. And the exact second I start the Leonore call, all of a sudden there's this really loud B natural. And I'm standing back there, I've got my eyes closed and I'm freaking out. I'm like, what the fuck? Is that some kind of like weird bounce off the back wall or something? And then I realized it was a fire alarm, so I just transposed up a half step and played the rest of the fanfare.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And of course the orchestra's walking off stage as I'm doing that, because everybody by that time, we're getting up and we're leaving.
Yeah. Oh God.
So, yeah.
That's funny.
Okay, last question. When did you laugh the hardest? I can remember.
Oh, when did I laugh the hardest? Good Lord, I'm always laughing.
Yeah, but the hardest.
I'm trying to think. One time I remember particularly, this was after a divorce. I was dating this woman. She and I had flirted on and off, for years, but we'd been married at different times, and then we're single at the same time. And so I had played at her wedding, one of her weddings. I played trumpet. And so she gets the video out one night. She goes, let's watch this thing. I'm like, okay. She goes, I don't remember you playing at the end. She goes, I remember you playing, water music at the beginning, but I don't remember you. What did you play at the end? I'm like, I don't remember, And so anyway, so we start watching this thing. And so there's the water music. She walks down the aisle, and then the pastor's like, okay, let's bow our heads in prayer. And as everybody's praying, you see me stand up and skulk out because I had a concert right after that or something, and we laughed really hard at that because we were trying to remember what happened at the end of the wedding. And here I am skulking out of her wedding, So that was pretty funny. I guess you had to be there, but it was just, I laughed. We both laughed really hard at that. That was a memorable laugh. Yeah. So.
I always ask that question. I can't even think of mine.
I mean, either. Yeah. A lot. There's a lot.
Well, I mean, I'm sure if I thought farther, I would come up with some other stuff.
Kind of a hard question because usually those memories don't just like pop into your head unless they randomly pop into your head. You tend to laugh really randomly. Like
That's true.
She'll just get in a giggling mode, and I'm just like, "What's funny?" And she's like, "Like I don't know what triggers it, but
I don't know why."
Well, I know my wife and I don't know if you've watched the show Veep on HBO.
Oh, it's been recommended so much, but I never got in. I never started it.
Dude, when we watched that show, we would have to hit pause like 3 or 4 times in every show just so we could laugh. I mean, that show just really brought the funny for us. It hit my particular funny bones.
Gotcha.
And I also thought Letterkenny was really funny too. So.
What was your favorite show that you binged during pandemic year?
Letterkenny.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
What was ours?
Dark, probably.
Oh, maybe Dark.
I don't know.
Although that got too dark, obviously. It's this like German show. It's about like timelines and all this stuff. And we were like already feeling.
What's it called?
It's called Dark. It's a Netflix original. It's in German. And I don't know. We still have to watch season 3. We just kind of
finished it. It was too much, I think.
Back in like.
Have you seen did you see The Beforeigners?
I don't think so.
That's a good one. That's filmed in, that's in Norwegian. Yes, Norwegian. So it's filmed in Norway. All these people start showing up in the middle of the harbor there from different times, So you got Vikings, you got Victorian people, you got cavemen, all blending into modern society.
That sounds cool.
It's fascinating. It's really cool. So
Nice.
it's all of our interests,
Yeah.
We like Vikings.
We're watching Vikings right now.
Vikings is really good. Yeah. So
Ragnar Lothbrok.
Yeah.
And we also watched. We didn't finish it, but what's the one with like Ted Danson and Heaven?
Good Place.
The Good Place.
Yeah.
The Good Place. That's
What
really
season did we get up to?
3, 4?
3 or 4. I felt like the first couple seasons were like really amazing, and then it sort of started losing my attention a little bit. That could be me. I don't know if it's the show or me.
Yeah, The Good Place has probably the best series finale of
really?
I've seen.
So you would say we should definitely finish it?
I definitely think so. It's just so well done at the end. It's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So, but Letterkenny is one of those things I just, a lot of people haven't heard of it. It's Canadian comedy, and it's just, if it suits your tastes, it's some of the funniest crap you've ever seen. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't, you're like,
Gotcha. All right. Well, we could say goodbye off air, but I'll say, thanks so much for coming on, and hopefully we can maybe do it again sometime.
Yeah. Thank you.
That'd be great. It's good to see you, and nice to meet you too, Janka.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Exploring Kodawari. If you enjoyed it, we hope you'll consider sharing it on social media and with friends. You can also help us out by leaving a rating and a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those help us more than you would think. And if you'd like to help us out in a more substantial way, consider going over to our website to make a donation through PayPal. Links are in the episode notes for this. You can do this as a one-time donation or a recurring monthly donation. All of that support will help us to set aside time in order to create content for the podcast and the blog. And finally, please get in touch with us and say hi, either on social media or privately through email. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.